Wibta if I play the song that my mom chose for her funeral, knowing it might offend some attendees. My mom recently passed away, and our family primarily me are making the arrangements for the upcoming funeral. My mom always had a really excellent sense of humor, and before she passed she told not only me but all of the palliative care staff at the hospital that the song she wanted played at her funeral was Ding Dong, The Witch is Dead from The Wizard of Oz. I managed to at least talk her out of the soundtrack version sung by the Munchkins and got her to agree to the classier jazz version by Ella Fitzgerald. Now, I agree with my mom that this would be a really funny thing to play at a funeral and would showcase her sense of humor to a T. However, I'm also very aware that not everyone that's going to come to the funeral is going to take the joke in the same spirit, and I think that some of the more religious friends and family members might be extra upset because there's a certain repeated line that implies she's going to hell. Plus, we're explicitly having a non-religious service and one of said family members has already expressed disappointment with that. So on the one hand I think it's my mom's funeral and I should respect her wishes above anyone else's opinions, but on the other hand I realize that funerals are for the living, and it's pretty disrespectful to do something that's going to upset those actually in attendance when obviously my mom isn't going to know one way or the other. Wibta if I still play the song my mom picked. If it matters my alternate choice would be Landslide by Fleetwood Mac, which was her favorite song and what we all listened to in the hospital together after she passed. Update Wibta if I play the song that my mom chose for her funeral, knowing it might offend some attendees. Hi, everyone. I figured I'd come back and give you all an update on how things turned out with my mom's memorial service original post here. I'm really grateful for everyone who convinced me that playing the song she chose was the right option. So yes, I decided to go ahead and play the Ella Fitzgerald version of Ding Dong, The Witch is Dead after incorporating the story behind it into my eulogy, which a few people suggested as the best way to bridge the gap between a serious occasion and a silly song. We poured a toast for everyone first and I told them we would raise a glass during the song, and then introduced it like this. I'm sure you all know my mother had a wicked sense of humor. And if you know where I'm going with this, you know why I said it that way. For as long as I can remember, she told me and everybody else that she wanted a certain song played at her funeral because she wanted everyone to laugh, not cry, and because she knew she wouldn't have to deal with it if anybody didn't get the joke. But I think you'll all get it, and despite the circumstances, I hope this will be another happy memory that we all associate with my mom. And then I played the song, and people immediately started smiling and chuckling when they caught on to what it was. The couple of people I worried about not finding it funny seemed to take it well enough. They weren't giggling like everyone else, but I think they were accepting of the song being what my mom wanted. And afterwards a few people told me that the song was perfect and that they could totally see my mom requesting that. All in all, it was a very nice celebration of life and I'm happy with the way things turned out. AITA for keeping score with my family and ruining dinner. I 27 meters am the third of 4 siblings and have always felt like an afterthought. Lori 33F, Chuck 29 meters, and Jade 25F have always gotten the first and best from my parents and each other. I get the leftovers if I'm lucky. I haven't gotten a birthday present from any of my siblings in about 10 years, but I still get asked to pitch in for group gifts for each of them every year. On Friday night we were having a family dinner and it honestly felt like every other sentence was a dig at me, or a less than subtle brag by my siblings about something they have been given by my parents that I was denied. They talked about how nice almost all of our weddings were, but made sure to mention it was okay that my wife and I had a small low-key wedding. And it was okay, we loved it, but they brushed over the fact that my parents paid for all of my siblings' weddings. But not mine, because somehow they couldn't afford it. Because they were saving up for Jade's wedding. They brought up how little student loans they have. Because my parents helped them. All of them lived on campus at expensive 4-year schools. I lived at home and went first to a very prestigious, very hard to get into watchmaking school. I got paid to attend this school. So I paid rent at home. My parents paid for my tools. And I appreciate the help, I really do, but they paid $121.50 each for my siblings. They gave me $7K for tools, but to the mid-sequel. When I went back to school on my own, I didn't ask for money and wasn't offered it. When my brother went back to school they covered everything without him even having to ask. There were many other small moments, comments about cars and other lifestyle choices, but what made me snap was my brother and his wife mentioning their marriage being so great because they do things like spontaneous dates, like the one they had the prior Friday night. The Friday night where my parents called my wife and I last minute to cancel plans. They had to eat dinner at our house because they had to watch Chuck's kids because of an emergency. Turns out that emergency was a dinner for Chuck and myself at Texas Roadhouse. I had spent hours making my grandpa's ziti and meatballs with homemade marinara because it's my mom's favorite. I wanted more than anything to scream at them, but instead I got up and left without saying a word, and my wife followed me. When my mom called me later to ask why I left, I just explained exactly why. I explained the favoritism, the unfairness, and the fact that it doesn't feel like they care about me. She didn't say much, and I wasn't really looking for an explanation or an apology in the moment. I just felt like it was self-evident, but if she really didn't see it, I'd spell it out. Evidently at least parts of what I said have been shared with my siblings, because now Chuck and Lori are furious at me and saying I ruined dinner, and my mom is upset that I am hurt. They say I'm immature for keeping score. AITA? Update: AITA for keeping score with my family and ruining dinner. Original post source share up medium WebEx Sutton name WebEx Sutton turn 1 Utton content share button. So, update time. About a week after that post, my wife and I sat down with my parents and cleared the air. As several people suggested, I wrote down my thoughts and compiled to the best of my knowledge a listing and full accounting of the disparity in what my siblings were given over the years and what I was given. I did actually sit down and do the math, and it turns out that while I was at the Technicum, I actually paid my parents more in rent than they ever paid for my tools. But the final reckoning came to between $370,000 on the high end Jade to $190,000 on the low end Chuck for how much my parents directly gave to my siblings that they never gave me. Sitting down and seeing the full amount all spelled out like that is probably the angriest I got during this whole mess. My parents had been aware there were discrepancies, but really pushed back on the actual amounts until we sat down and went through each major gift incident case by case, by which point my dad admitted my reckoning was likely conservative. That was more or less the end of any productive talk that night. My dad just claimed they didn't think it had gotten that bad, but wouldn't give any details about how they could have possibly not noticed. In the interim, Chuck and Lori continued to escalate their anger, continued to call and text me, my parents, and extended family. I have not spoken to either of them directly since and don't expect to anytime soon. Roughly a week after that first sit down, my mom and dad asked to meet again. Lots was said, but the gist is this: they felt I was doing well and didn't need their help. Basically, they thought I would be fine without them. They admitted they probably live outside their means and gave more to my older siblings than they should have and could never have given me that much. They claim the timing of my wedding lined up with probably the most dire of their overspending, lack of saving, and that they literally did not have the funds to live up to their promise, especially as they were paying for Jade's tuition, car, and apartment at that time. They have offered money, they have offered to pay for vacations, a car, all kinds of stuff, but I think they don't really get it yet. My wife and I don't want their money, but we aren't really sure yet what an ideal resolution to this looks like. At least they have admitted they were unfair and are open to working things out. My wife and I spent Easter with Jade and her husband, and my grandparents, my mom and dad, came over in the evening. This seems to be more or less the new normal for now. AITA for accusing my mill of faking being hospitalized and refusing to let her stay with us. My husband is 57 and I am 49. My mill is 81. She used to be very independent, but since my Phil passed away a few years ago, her health has been declining. She can walk and take care of herself. She's just frailer and she's become much more soft-spoken and generally nice. Being perfectly honest, she never used to be easy to get along with, and my husband agrees. But anyways, that's alright. I didn't have much contact with her and she had her own life. My husband visited maybe once every few months because we live very close to her, about half an hour. Recently though, she wants him to visit more often and she gets upset when she isn't invited to things we are doing. For example, we recently went on a trip to celebrate my husband's birthday, and he didn't want to bring her as it would really limit the sorts of activities we could do. She insisted we should have gone on a chill trip and brought her. Last week we had gone to visit my family. My mill called my husband and said she was really sick and admitted in the hospital. My husband obviously panicked and we both took a flight that evening back home to see what was wrong. It turned out she was totally fine and apparently had a mild cold. We spoke to the doctor and she said my mill had said she couldn't breathe, and when the doctor said she could go home, she insisted on being admitted. I told my husband it sounds like she just wanted to be admitted so you would come back to check on her. He was appalled, but later on agreed that it did kind of make sense and sound like something she would do. She wants to stay with us now because she is sick. I said no, she is faking it and I don't want to deal with her all day. My husband thinks I'm being a selfish asshole. AITA for arguing with my potential future mill after she said she would be sad if I marry her son. I am a 25F and he is a 27M. We have been dating for 6 years and are think about marriage in 2-3 years. My partner is very family oriented, which is one of the traits that I fell in love with. However, He is also a mama's boy. He believes that since his parents raised him, he should pay them back by respecting them. However, his way of respecting them is by obeying everything that they say and want. His parents and I have crossed paths over the years, and on most of these occasions, his parents have made offhanded comments about my physical appearance, my career, and how I have changed their son. When something goes wrong in their son's life, they are quick to blame me as the reason for his downfall, even if I had no involvement in that aspect of his life. Since my partner and I are seriously thinking about marriage, we have been meeting up with his parents and my parents more often. During one of the dinners with his parents, my potential future MIL said she would be sad if I marry her son because she does not think I have a close relationship. I was in shock by her statement and did not respond back. After that moment of silence, she continued to ask me if I agreed that we did not have the best relationship. I think at this point, the initial shock was disappearing and I started to feel hurt by her words. In response to her question, I said that I don't think we have a close relationship because I often feel attacked by her. I then continued to list a few prime examples. As we discussed these examples, the conversation became more heated and turned into a full-blown argument. The last thing I remember saying to her was that if my partner and I ever broke up, it will be all her fault. Now, she complains to her son about me all the time and refuses to speak to me. Her behavior is causing some strain in my relationship. AITA for arranging with her. I come from a cultural background where respecting your elders is pretty much the golden rule. AITA for banning my ex and his family from seeing my daughter. So I 23F have a daughter with my husband 30M that I am separated from. Our baby is a year old. One thing I want to make clear before I continue. I love my baby. But when I first got pregnant, I didn't want to have a child. I had been with my ex since I was 19 and he always wanted a baby, but I wanted to wait until my late 20s. I was a mess during the pregnancy, but when she was placed on my chest after I gave birth, she became my whole world. This is relevant for later. I separated from my ex when I was still pregnant. He refused to come with me to register the birth and he said he didn't care whether or not I put him on the birth certificate, so I didn't put him on it. He wasn't involved in her life until she was about 6 months old. His father, the man who set us up together as he is friends with my dad, was embarrassed by this, so he had been paying child support to me on behalf of his son. My ex legally does not have parental rights because we only had a religious marriage done and he refused a legal marriage. After that, my ex-in-laws have been making sly comments about taking her from me. They'll say things like, "Oh, she's had so much fun with us, she should be here all the time," etc. At first I thought it was because they want to see her more, but then they would start returning her later than agreed to me or coming over unannounced to see her. Then the comments about how I didn't want her started rolling in, but they were only made to me and never done in front of her. My dad got involved then and they were forced to apologize. Recently, there has been some tension regarding proceeding with the divorce. L didn't let this affect when my ex-in-laws and my ex saw my daughter, so I took her to see them last weekend as agreed. When I came back to collect her, they demanded I let her stay the night. I said that it wasn't what we agreed and I didn't want her parted from her as she was still breastfed. It got heated. Police were nearly called, but I called my father first to come mediate. When they finally gave my daughter back to me, my ex yelled, "You didn't even want her," and she heard. She started crying. When I got home, I said they weren't allowed to see her again. Now that I know what they're comfortable saying in front of her, who knows what else they're saying? She can't speak, but I'm sure she can understand. Yesterday was a religious holiday and I started getting phone calls asking to see my baby from my ex-in-laws, but I ignored them. Today, my ex Phil has turned up to my house and he was saying I was wrong to deny them access to their daughter or granddaughter. According to him, no matter what, I shouldn't deny them access to her as they're her family too. My mother thinks that I'm right because my ex chose not to have parental rights. So in the eyes of the law, I have the right to make this decision. Other people are telling me the opposite, and a friend told me to post here for more insight. AITA for blowing up at my husband because he counted his work on our D&D game as one of his chores. I 35F and my husband 35M have been together for 10 years, blissfully happy. No notes. Over COVID we got into Dungeons and Dragons. We have a weekly game that runs from 3 to 4 hours with 3 other friends. 5 of us have been going on adventures for the past few years, meeting consistently over Zoom. I've been having a great time overall. My husband is the DM, which means he does a lot of work preparing the sessions. This includes coming up with the characters we are going to have conversations with, figuring out the battles we are going to fight, and so on. I really appreciate his work. On the other hand, I've been feeling like I'm doing more chores in our partnership. I cook a lot, clean the kitchen, help with the laundry, do most of the driving. We tried splitting chores before. There was a period where he would fold laundry or do cleaning while I cooked. but it didn't last beyond a week or two. I normally don't particularly mind, but life has been especially shit lately due to health issues in the family, and I think it put extra stress on us. So, the other day I cooked dinner. During dinner he was giving me a sneak peek of the magical items he made for the blacksmith in the new town, and I guess I didn't look as excited, so he asked me why. I said I'll be excited when you clean up the kitchen after we are done eating. This started a major argument, and we really don't have many of those, so it was a bit intense about how I don't appreciate his work on this campaign. I countered by saying he's free to work on his hobbies as much as he wants, but it's not the same thing as helping me out with chores. To this, he countered that his work on this D&D campaign counts as a chore, just like cooking and cleaning. He said he provides a space for hanging out with our friends every week. In a way, he's organizing and scheduling our social life, and that it takes a lot of work. I thought this was an absolutely bonkers perspective. This is where things escalated because I was sort of befuddled. I still am, and he got really hurt. He did say the fact that you're asking this shows you don't understand how much work I put into this campaign. For the record, I did run a leg of the campaign as the DM for a few weeks, and it was a lot of work, but it was a hobby, at least to me. It was a fun thing I elected to do, not something I needed to do, like a chore. He pointed out that I don't need to cook either. We can afford to eat out every night and hire a cleaning service for sorting out the apartment. He's not wrong. We can afford it, but it still felt weird. I eventually let it go, but I feel like I am going to need some sort of a resolution to this because I can feel the resentment bubbling in my chest. I don't want to win an argument. I am not looking for vindication, but can someone give me an insight into this conflict? Am I wrong? Am I being the asshole here? Thank you. AITA for canceling dinner while my husband was at work. Context: my husband owns a coffee shop that usually closes at 10 p.m. but sometimes he would close it earlier if he wants to. Tonight, my 24F husband 25M told me that we should eat out for dinner since we didn't have food at home. I said yes, and suggested that we go out around 9 p.m. and told him I'll put the kids to bed at 8 p.m. with the house clean and everything. He agreed, and by 8:30 both kids were already asleep and the house was clean. I messaged him that I'm ready and if we could go now. He said that he still has a customer, and I was fine with it and mentioned something about the food. However, he didn't respond. Then 9:30 rolled around, so I messaged him again. Nothing. At this point I was starving and getting hangrier by the minute. I kept messaging and calling him but no response. I was getting upset. BCS, he does this all the time. I would usually be fine, but tonight I was hungry, plus the kids woke up. I messaged him that I was going to just fry an egg and this dinner is over, he can eat out alone. That's when he started messaging me again, telling me he was busy and he could just order me food. But I told him to forget it. BCS, I'm not going to starve myself again waiting for him. He got upset and said that I should be more understanding. BCS, he was working, but he does this so much that I don't want to deal with it anymore. AITA, I'm not mad that we didn't go out. It was the principle of just telling me if we were going to eat or not. Added to AITA didn't mention a lot of things that you all want an info about, so here goes. 1. Who was looking after the kids? This one caused a mass panic. Lol, my dad lives with us. He usually looks after them. 2. What did the kids and grandpa eat? If there weren't any food, the dinner I cooked earlier that night, I didn't cook anything for me and hubby cause he wanted to eat out. 3. Why not have a snack? I did, but it wasn't cutting it cause I was an exhausted mom that needs more than just snack at that point. Plus, if I eat any more I would have lost my appetite. 4. Why not just go to his place and bring food? We live in a small town. The shop was located in a neighborhood that is unsafe to walk at night. I don't have any means of transportation, and doing a 20 walk isn't really a safe option. 5. He said he was busy with a customer. He said that around 8:30. The date was 9, which was the time the customer left. However, relatives came by and he wanted to entertain them, but he didn't bother to tell me that until around 10:36. Why suggest dinner at 9, when shop closed at 10? The place he wanted to go to closes at 10. But since we often go there around the time, it has become a habit for him to message the resto beforehand, so when we arrive the food is ready and we're out of there after 30 minutes. 7. Don't plan a date during the work hours. I agree, poor planning, but earlier in our convo he was complaining that it was a slow night and should just close the shop early. 8. What do you mean he does this all the time? I mean, he would make a plan and not go through with it. And that's not just when he's working. He would make plans with me, then be out with others, family later. When our time come to do something, he would stop responding and would respond much later. 9. Ungrateful for being a BTCH that he had to work late, while I just sat my spoiled butt waiting for food in my mouth. I was going to ruin the business with my attitude. Where did you all get that? I was fully capable of feeding myself, but he insisted on the dinner together. Also, why would I want to ruin a business I initially funded? I also work, and am the main provider. I didn't think this info was relevant. Y'all are wild for making that assumption. The part that I was upset was not giving me a quick update. Not the part that he was still working. Thank you for everyone's response. I appreciate it. I will discuss setting hard boundaries regarding set times for dates. Also, it was hilarious seeing you all making assumptions about me. Thanks for the laugh. AITA for checking on my cousin, something my sister calls a betrayal to her. My 20F family kind of imploded this past weekend, and I feel kind of caught in the middle. My half-sister Melody 25F got married on Saturday and our cousin Joey 21M skipped the wedding, for what I believe to be understandable reasons. First, he fractured his humerus I think 2 maybe 3 weeks ago. I think he initially told Melody he might not make it because of this. Melody was somewhat understanding. One thing to know about her is that she's a diva. I honestly think she was upset because the family would be focused on asking about him instead of her wedding. A couple days later he texted her and said he might be able to make it to the ceremony after all. She said great, and left it at that. I texted him and asked if he was really well enough to, and he said he'd rather push through it than deal with the family's frustration. Since Melody is the oldest cousin, my whole family treats her like a princess. Personally, I think it's out of fear because she's mean AF when anyone crosses her, which is why she and I don't have a close relationship. Well, Joey reached out again the night before the wedding and said he wouldn't be able to make it after all. He said he wasn't feeling well physically or mentally, to the point that he had been nauseous and vomiting. Melody just said K. Come to find out, Joey went to a funeral for one of his friend's younger siblings, who he was also close with the day before Melody's wedding, prior to him texting her. Someone tagged him in a picture on social media at the memorial. A couple days after the wedding, Melody saw this and flipped out on Joey, saying the out-of-town family members were asking why he wasn't at the wedding, which was true. A couple of them asked me, and she claims he lied because he was well enough to go to a funeral and that blood should be thicker than water. My parents and I tried to help her see his side, but she said she's done talking to him and done hearing about him. Joey and I talk almost every day, usually via text, and he's normally very engaged and likes to text, but all this week he's been leaving me on read. At first I was trying to send him memes to cheer him up, but yesterday I finally asked if he was okay. He said not really. I talked to my parents about it, and for reasons I don't really understand, they told Melody that I had talked to Joey. She's now saying I'm an because texting someone who chooses friends over family is a betrayal, and that she's deeply hurt by him and me. I told her she's being dramatic and cruel, which of course has just led to more fighting. AITA for demanding why my husband was driven home drunk by a female intern. Hello everyone, please help me. I'm descending into madness. My husband and I, 30s, married for 14 years with 3 children, have a wonderful marriage despite some issues that I would consider minor, like anger issues and stonewalling. A couple months ago he had too much to drink during a team lunch for work, and a female intern drove him home in our vehicle. She is the only single woman at the office. I feel there are countless actions that would make this a non-issue, and it is killing me that he chose not to do any of them. From my perspective, I saw a strange woman outside in one of our vehicles in our side drive. I called him but didn't get a response. His phone was left in the car with her, and then she was picked up and ran to another car, and I eventually found my husband up in our bedroom. I don't know how I missed him entering the house. I did not understand the situation or why I couldn't get through to him or his office. He has never had drinks at work before. His response was, "How could you ever be upset over this? I didn't drive drunk." He immediately became defensive, called me insecure, and attempted to distract me with other arguments. He has remained defensive, and it is just eating away at me. I told him that I would appreciate hearing it from him that nothing is going on, and if she truly was just giving him a ride home to avoid a DUI, I will send her a gift basket. What kills me is he didn't text me to let me know what was going on. He didn't call an Uber, like he has done many times. He didn't call me, even though I was home and would have gladly picked him up. And he didn't offer any reassurance when I calmly told him his actions made me feel unloved. My husband had a rough upbringing in a broken home with 2 emotionally unintelligent parents, and lashes out at me whenever he is frustrated or mad. I have begged him for couples therapy. I have been willing to excuse bad behavior towards me, such as holding it over my head that he is the financial provider and I am a psalm. But infidelity is my line in the sand. I truly don't know if this is a non-issue that seems suspicious or is something worse. I went to his work function a month later, and the intern was there, and she never made eye contact. I had to ask my husband to introduce us, and he became angry that I did. This could be because he feels I have already given him a hard time about the situation and her. This is the second time he has been driven home drunk by the only single woman he knows. In the past, there were multiple instances of cheating at my father's company, including my dad, which admittedly makes me sensitive, I think, and he had said those instances were unacceptable and that all involved parties were idiots. How is this situation acceptable then? I consider myself secure, And before this would have said I completely trust him. Why might he be refusing to discuss this? To anyone who might respond, thank you in advance. It means the world to me. AITA for embarrassing a student. At 23 I'm a first-year elementary teacher. I currently teach the 5th grade. It's been a huge adjustment from college to teaching, but I enjoy it. One of my students 11M, who we'll call Warren, not using real names, is very advanced. He's in the 99th percentile for IQ and is way above grade level in all academic areas. He's autistic, but quite social, and is close friends with a group of boys he plays basketball with. His friends are all in grade level or slightly above, nowhere near him. Warren is a sweet kid, but if he's not being academically stimulated, he'll be acting like a class clown and distracting the class. There's this concept in education called differentiated instruction, which is basically about meeting kids at various levels in the same classroom. When learning about a topic, I give Warren late high school or early college level reading materials, as that is what challenges him. Warren has a cousin 11F in our class who we'll call Mia. Mia is slightly below grade level. She doesn't show any signs of autism and has different interests than Warren. They don't talk much together in class, but they don't argue. The only argument they got into was when Mia made a racially insensitive comment to a classmate who's the only POC in my room. Warren tried explaining why her comment was wrong to her, but she didn't understand before I had to talk to her. Last Tuesday, I asked the class what they did over the break. Mia mentioned how their family celebrated Easter. She said Warren was acting strange. The first thing she brought up was him being atheist, his parents are religious, and how she didn't get it. Then she said he had weird worksheets. Apparently, he brought some of his homework to Easter and Mia saw it. She asked why his worksheets have so many big words compared to the ones her and her friends got. I tried explaining why, but I didn't want any of the kids to feel dumb, so I didn't really give a great answer, just it's what he likes. Mia kept asking if she could try his worksheets, because she can know big words too. I was unsure what to do as a first year, so I asked some colleagues and they said to just give her one of his worksheets. We were doing an English assignment on a book we read in class. She came crying to me when she couldn't do it, and got virtually every answer wrong. I told her I wouldn't count it and she could have her old worksheet. The next day, I got a call from Mia's parents. They were screaming and asked why I made her cry. After I explained what happened, they told me they wanted me to name the teachers that told me to give her a copy of Warren's worksheet because they wanted to make sure they learn a lesson. I told them their names in a panic and hung up, and then went to admin to explain the situation, who were sympathetic. Since then, both Mia and Warren's parents have been posting on Facebook about my colleagues, calling them bullies. AITA for forcing someone to get therapy. My girlfriend has anger management issues and abandonment issues. This in turn gave me my own set of traumas while being in a relationship with her. I called for a breakup and told her I want to heal first, and basically forced her into doing the same because she didn't want to break up yet, and told her I will only call off the breakup if she gets therapy, even though I know she's not comfortable being vulnerable in front of anyone and talking about her life. I'm basically the only person she's comfortable with to tell her story. I feel like I'm forcing her and pressuring her into doing it, so AITA for giving my wife an online application to work at Arby's and telling her she isn't doing her share, so she needs to go back to work and I don't care where. My wife and I have been married for almost 20 years. Before she quit she job everything was pretty good. I made more than her, but we still did 50-50 chore split and had 2 kids. Our 2 kids are in middle school and high school. They have their own chores and are pretty independent. They get themselves up for school and on the bus, no issue. My wife used to work at a stressful job. I have been telling her for years to look at other jobs that have less stress before it blows up. She didn't, had a breakdown, and quit her job with no notice. That was 5 months ago, and I told her I can support us, but she need to take up doing the chores. Also look for a new job. She has not kept up her end of the deal. I come home to chores every single day. I work more hours now but have to do a ton of chores when I get home. I am getting close to burnout. It is work and more work. Last month I sat her down and told her to write down what she did this week. It was very short list. I wrote down what I did this week and it was much longer. She told me she got the point and would do better. That lasted for about a week and it went back to her doing nothing. I had my breaking point yesterday. I worked 10 hours to come home to a dirty kitchen and no food since she didn't go food shopping. I pulled up an application for Arby's and sent it to her. I informed her she has this month to get a job and I don't care where. Clearly she isn't helping with the house, so she needs to make money to help out. This started an agreement and she thinks I am being a huge jerk. It's only been a few months since she quit. Also, I am not being compassionate enough and needs more time to recover. AITA for installing a slide lock on my bedroom door without my parents' permission, ruining the door frame. I 17F lived together with my parents and younger brother Mike, 15M. Mike often has friends over. Problem is that Mike has absolutely no respect for my privacy. He and his friends often barge into my room at completely random times. It has happened multiple times that they end up barging in right as I'm hay-naked because I'm changing or getting dressed. I complained to my parents so many times that I want a lock on my door if Mike keeps going into my room. But they just don't care because he's just playing. So when Mike and my parents were both out at some point, I installed a slide lock on my bedroom door. Admittedly, it doesn't look great because I never did anything like this before, but at least it works. Nobody knew I did it either, so I was kind of pleased with myself. Now yesterday Mike tried to barge into my room again, but this time I had the door locked so he couldn't get in. He started yelling and told our parents that I locked the door, so when my parents checked they obviously saw what I did. My father got really mad and removed the lock I installed and yelled at me that I ruined the frame and the door, and that the repair cost will come from my allowance. I think this is really unfair since I wouldn't have had to do this if Mike would just have stopped going into my room randomly. Was I wrong for installing the lock? I don't think asking for a little privacy was that much to ask for. AITA for kicking my half-sister out of my dad's wake. My dad had 5 kids with 4 women. Messy, I know, but he's dead, so I'd appreciate everyone being respectful. We are 36, 34, 27 me, 25 Nicole, and 19. None of us are close to Nicole because she is always insanely selfish, possessive, and has the world's most draining victim complex. We all had as little contact with her as possible. Prior to this wake, none of us had spoken to Nicole outside of family weddings for years. Of all of us, I was closest to my dad in his last couple of years and took care of him the most. So when he passed, I was the one to work through all the paperwork and organize the funeral, his belongings, and his wake. At the wake, there were about 70 people, all in my dad's house. I was sort of in work mode to avoid the grief and making my way around the room, etc. When I noticed Nicole had arrived, I asked my aunt to greet her and continued with what I had to do. I did greet Nicole, but she kept trying to come up and talk to me during the wake, wanting to go to a separate room to talk and generally seeming a bit erratic. I kept trying to hint that I really didn't have the time or the emotional space to be fully in my feelings at that time, but she just didn't seem to get the message. This went on for nearly 2 hours and I was tired. My feet hurt, my blood sugar was low, and as pathetic as it sounds, I really just wanted to talk to my dad, who was in the ground. I wasn't having the best day. So I finally sat down with my little sister, and Nicole storms over and in front of the entire room, raises her voice and says something like, "Oh, so you have time for her and not me? My dad died too and I'm trying to talk to you." I don't know if I was in my right mind honestly, because I still do not remember feeling anything that day other than lightheaded, and completely and utterly incensed by Nicole's outburst. I told her quietly, "Nicole, someone has died. You are not the victim today. I will not deal with this embarrassment on top of everything else. Get out of my house." She started arguing with me, but I just walked away and my fiancé escorted her out while I went into the kitchen for a few minutes. I've had to block Nicole because of the amount of messages she sent, but since the dust has settled, a couple of relatives I've spoken to have said it was harsh to kick her out because she was sad about the death. I think that considering this is a pattern of behavior for her, it didn't have much to do with the grief. My siblings agree, but a few family members have gently suggested I reach out and apologize. Should I? AITA for no longer helping my sister out. Throw away it. Please don't post this anywhere. My older sister, Amy 36F, runs her own little bakery from her home. It's honestly pretty successful and she's been able to make a decent living off of it. She's been getting a lot more orders and has been needing an extra pair of hands. She asked me about 2 months ago to help her. I 23F agreed and told her not to worry about payment since it wasn't too much to handle. So it was agreed I was coming in to help whenever I'm free, so about 4 days out of the week. I'm in charge of calls, payment, scheduling and anything that has to do with the more financial side of the business. I recently had asked for about 2 weeks off because I needed to focus on my actual job, as I needed to get some work done before deadlines. She didn't really like that but still okayed it. But I made sure I made it known to whoever called, and as well as made announcements on her website and pages that the business is taking 2 weeks to catch up with orders. She was made aware of this and gave me the green light. I come back on Monday, and as I was checking up emails for her, I saw many, about 10 angry emails complaining about me. I was checking the dates and it was the 2 weeks I was gone. She was messaging people pretending to be me and was seriously being rude to them. She was straight up going, "Hey, this is Emma. with Amy's Bakery. So she was intentionally telling people it was me. We don't live in a huge city, and with the type of job I work it's not hard to find me either. I am still beyond pissed. I confronted her and she said it's no big deal and that it's not like people know who we are. I literally yelled at her and called her a lot of mean names. It doesn't take a genius to literally just look at her Facebook friends and see my info. I refused to help her and stopped coming over. She's been begging me to come back and apologizing for the things she's done. My parents are trying not to take sides, but are pushing me to talk to her. I refuse. My other siblings are calling me a dick for leaving her when I know she needs help. I'm just so angry at her for just starting shit for no reason. AITA for not caring that I offended my pregnant friend. So I was unaware of this until today, but apparently I've been offending my pregnant friend with reels for months. My friend, Amy, got pregnant 2 months ago. Her and her partner do not have many friends or a great support system due to them not having a relationship with his parents. I've been trying to be a supportive friend the entire time. I've taken Amy to her appointments when her partner can't. I've taken her clothes shopping for the baby. And whenever a pregnancy young mom baby reel comes across my page, I've sent it to her for ideas. Apparently, this is where she takes issue. I want to preface this by saying that these TikToks were never supposed to be anything but fun little things for her to watch. They were just things like newborn wake windows, cute milestones posts, and discount baby thrift shops in our area. This is her first baby and the first friend of mine to have a baby, so I thought she would appreciate the support, since a lot of people I know have turned their back on their friends after they get pregnant, especially when they're young. I messaged her on Instagram today to ask if she had seen the most recent reel I sent her with this baby thrift shop that's about a 2-hour drive from us, because I wanted to offer to drive her there while our partners were away at work, quite literally almost to the state border, and I received a very rude message instead. In short, I'm telling her how to be a parent when it's none of my business. I seem to think she's in over her head and she has far more experience with kids than I do, and I should butt out. I haven't apologized yet because I don't know what to say, but AITA, if I simply don't care about her feelings on this, it seems like a stupid thing to get offended over when I have literally been half of her support system through these last 8 months. I have done nothing but support her. I literally got her a job interview at my job, to make money before maternity leave. For her to turn around and essentially spit on everything I've done or helped her do, I do not care. If a few videos on motherhood offended her so badly she felt the need to get aggro at me about it. AITA for not changing the date of my daughter's birthday party. My cousin Sam 26M and his wife Jill 24F recently announced that they're having a baby. They waited longer than usual to tell everyone because her last pregnancy ended in a miscarriage and they were being very cautious. She is due in August and is planning to have her baby shower the first weekend in June. However, my 29F daughter's first birthday is also that Saturday, the party, as well as her actual birth date, the same day as the shower. We live 5 hours away from them, so making the drive requires a bit of planning on our part. We considered moving her party from Saturday to Sunday, but I don't know if I can justify 5 hours of driving to go to a 2-hour baby shower, turn around, and drive another 5 hours back home, then set up and prepare for a birthday party on a Sunday. Jill, who decided to announce this all on Easter, said it's insanely rude that my husband and I won't change our plans and celebrate our daughter's birthday on a different day, even though we have had this planned way before we even knew she was pregnant, and that we would like to have her party on her actual birthday. She said that we're ruining her day and making it all about ourselves and our baby. My aunt called me last week to tell me that I'm being selfish, and that a first birthday party isn't that important because our daughter won't remember it and won't know that it's not her actual birthday. I said I don't understand why it's so important to Jill to have her shower on that day, and I was called an unreasonable asshole. So I really need to actually the asshole? AITA for not cleaning the house for my brother's girlfriend. My brother and I both live at home with our dad. I was visiting my girlfriend last weekend and my brother called me and told me that his girlfriend's apartment flooded and she was going to be staying with us for a few days. He told me that my dad said I had to come home right away to clean the house. I left my girlfriend's a few hours later as planned. When I got home, I asked my dad what he wanted me to clean. He said he never told my brother that I had to come home and clean. A few minutes later, my brother and his girlfriend were going out. I asked him where they were going because we were supposed to be cleaning the house, and he said they were going to meet his girlfriend's parents, but I should clean. AITA for not leaving my girlfriend's early to clean for my brother's girlfriend. AITA for not telling my best friend that I've been married for years. 4 years ago I eloped with my partner and got married with no one in attendance. We are very private and didn't tell anyone. We'd been together for 5 years prior and this marriage was more of a formality for us rather than a celebration. Recently, My best friend Meredith and I was having a conversation about marriage, where I causally mentioned that I was married and had been for years. This completely caught Meredith off guard and it totally offended her that I'd kept this information from her. She felt betrayed and questioned our friendship. I tried to explain that the marriage decision was between myself and my partner and we hadn't excluded her on purpose, we just wanted the day to be about only us. No one was invited. I also tried to explain that I hadn't told her about it in all these years, because it was never a big deal to me or something I felt needed to be announced. Meredith has known myself and my partner prior to us getting married and after. We've always been close friends. I believe she is hurt that I never told her I was married in all the years we've been friends. AITA for not wanting to give my dog away even though my BF is allergic. IF21 recently got a new puppy. I live alone and decided this was a good idea to have some company. However, my boyfriend M21 has grown to dislike him over the past 2 months. My boyfriend visits every weekend, since he still lives with his parents, and we get into arguments about my puppy most of those weekends, with the last one being that he wants me to give him my dog away. He claims he is annoying and does not behave. I countered that with the fact that he is only 3 months old, not to mention he's already potty trained for the most part, very friendly with people and dogs, and can do some tricks. That being said, in one of the arguments, he brought up a hypothetical: would you give him away if I was allergic? I'll admit I said yes, since he has shown no signs of allergies, or at least I thought. He texts me today saying he has a painful rash and he's certain it is from my dog. I don't know if I believe him, especially since he hasn't been over in 2 days. I said I'd buy an air purifier, dishedder, and wash the sheets every week before he comes, but he says none of that will help. AITA for not wanting to give my dog away even if I said I would. AITA for refusing to help pay my neighbor's vet bill after I poisoned his dog. Spoiler alert, I did not. I have lived in my house for 5 years now. It is an old bungalow in an older neighborhood. It's small and old-fashioned, but it is perfect for me and my dog. I have a massive backyard. Every house that gets sold around here now is turned into a duplex or 2 skinny homes. The corner lots get turned into 6 or 8 plexes. I have a rescue board collie, Dennis. He needs lots of exercise but he can't handle a lot of other people or dogs. We walk either very late at night or early in the morning. When he starts getting hyper I can take him to my yard and play with him until he is worn out. He is never allowed to be by himself back there, because I have lots of flowers planted and he is a destructive asshole. I recently got a new neighbor. They also have a dog. Over the winter their dog kept digging under the fence and running around my yard. Their home was owned by an older couple, who completely turned their yard into an ornamental garden, with raised flower beds and paved paths. Not a lot of running room. I went and talked to them about us figuring out a way to keep their dog out of my yard since I did not want to be hurt or responsible if something happened. They said that their dog was just exploring. I said we needed to get a contractor to put in a buried barrier or something. They said that they were not interested. I said that they could put paving stones against their side so their dog couldn't dig. They said that would look awful compared to the rest. Well, it's spring now. Their dog got into my yard and ate a bunch of my flowers, including chrysanthemums. Toxic but not fatal, thank God. They got a massive vet bill though, equivalent to a monthly mortgage payment. They want me to put in half since I poisoned their dog. I told them I felt badly for their dog, but they were deluded if they thought I owed them anything. They were lucky I wasn't going after them for the damage to my yard. We are not speaking now. They are furious, but the neighbors around us are on my side. I know I could afford it, and they are a young couple with lots of debt, but I warned them. Edited, I posted a picture as a comment. Dog tax paid. AITA for telling my brother that he's going to be a shit dad. I 30M was at my brother's 34M house when my sister-in-law 31F went into labor. They live in the countryside so the signal isn't too great sometimes unless they walk up the lane, so my brother was supposed to take her to the hospital instead of calling an ambulance, but for some fucking reason he decided to freak out and drive off somewhere. I can't drive, so I ran up the lane to call 999. It took forever to get signal and then it took forever for the ambulance to get to the house. I almost had to deliver the baby for fuck's sake. She ended up giving birth in huge back of an ambulance. This whole time my brother had just disappeared. He finally turned up at the hospital about 8 BF hours after he disappeared. Apparently he'd gone to her dad's house until I found out. My sil gave birth and made my brother go see her. I yelled at him outside the hospital for being so fucking stupid. He told me that he just got scared and didn't know what to do. I told him that he's going to a shit dad if he keeps reacting like this. What's he gonna do when the kid gets injured? And it's his responsibility to take him to AE? Is he just gonna dump the kid and run off to dad's again? He's such an idiot, fucking hell. He started crying and called me a twat for being so mean to him. I just lost it with him. He was acting like a child when he should be comforting his fucking wife and apologizing to her for being a dick. He called me a cunt and told me that I don't understand what he's feeling. I get that he was scared, but he seriously needs to get a grip and help his wife. AITA. AITA for telling my mill to get out of a photo of me and my husband were taking at my wedding. I 29F was getting married to my now husband 32M, now husband 32M, and my mill 59 was invited to the wedding. Of course, I got a strange feeling because she continued trying to pick a wedding dress for me when I had already picked one and said I did. I brushed it off, as I was excited and all. She also tried to get her son to pick a large, fancy cake that was only 20 cake. He said no, as I had told him. We already made all the arrangements, music, decorations, clothing. Fast forward, the day of the wedding, we had our ceremony and everything went great. Food and service was amazing. Had an artist draw me and my husband while we kissed. I noticed my mill to be wearing a white simple dress and didn't think much of it even though I was a little upset. To have context, she's the only one besides me wearing the color. Later, when it was photo taking time, I was going to take a photo with my husband. We stood in front of the camera. We had no official previous photos besides the kiss, but my mill walked into the photo. I told her politely to get out a little so me and my husband could take photos with the professional first. She didn't listen and stayed in anyway, and my husband didn't say anything. A small update: I took one of our photos and photoshopped her out of it, as I didn't have a chance to get a photo w him alone. I posted it on my Instagram and my mill texted me. She said I am disrespectful and family comes first through everything. But I said that it was my wedding and I understood that, but I wanted a photo with him alone and she did not allow that. My husband is upset with me for acting this way, saying I'm being dramatic. AITA for telling my sil that her family can't stay at my beach house anymore even though they helped build it. I'm 31 and my husband is 38. We live about 3 hours away from my sil's family. Her husband, 2 kids. A few years ago my husband and I bought a really run-down property on the coast, a couple hours from where we live. I wanted to make a project of fixing it up. My husband liked the idea and was happy to support it, but it was mostly my project. I really put a lot of effort into fixing it as cheaply as possible. Went over and stayed there for many nights and literally did a lot of the construction. My husband came and helped about half the time. I sourced recycled wood and such, so almost all the materials are found in some way. Once it was partially finished I thought I could enlist my sil's help, so I told her about this project and asked if she wanted to come stay over for a few days with her family and help finish up the work. She brought her kids and husband and slept out on the deck and did things like the painting and building some furniture, etc. When it was finished it was really beautiful. We started renting it out on Airbnb and have had good success with that so far. I did say that my sil's family could come stay anytime because they helped with it. There's 2 parts to the house that have separate kitchens and bathrooms, so we've kept the top for us and sil's family, and the bottom for Airbnb. Last week they were there at the same time as some paid guests. I got a complaint from the guests afterward that my sil's kids had made fun of their kids, and that my sil told them that this was their house so the guests don't get to dictate how their kids behave. I asked my sil about this and she said their kids wanted to play with the guests' kids on the beach, and the guests' kids tried to ask her kids to leave them alone but they wouldn't. They were playing volleyball and her kids were much better, and rightfully proud of it. I got pissed and I told her she wasn't allowed to stay there anymore if she can't be considerate of the fact that this is also a business and you can't be an ass to customers or anyone. Now she says I'm in awe because I promised she could stay anytime. AITA for telling my twin sister she will never fit in with us. I 29F have 4 siblings, Mark 33M, Josh 31M, Eva 29F, and Tony 26M. Me and Eva are fraternal twins. Our mother was Assam but she was emotionally absent. Growing up, our father was very hard on us. He wanted his first son to be a doctor, so Mark had to work all the time. He had Josh learn violin at 4 and made him play for hours. Tony had to be a lawyer. I had the chance to be a beautiful kid, and I participated in beauty pageants starting 3. Eva was free of this, because she wasn't beautiful, and my father didn't think a woman could do much anyway. She always had liberty and could do whatever she wanted, without pressure on her shoulders. She could have friends, had no care about her grades, and didn't have to work her ass off every day. We are not proud of it but we tended to exclude her since she was slacking off while we were working so hard. She also was a problematic teen. She skipped class, hung around with a bad crowd, and drank. She even disappeared for a week without notice when we were 15. Stating after that she wanted to get away with her BF for a road trip while I wasn't even allowed to leave the house for a night because my parents wanted to make sure I did my work and would only eat what I was allowed to. Eva would throw tantrums, saying she was neglected and no one would care if she disappeared. I was enraged with her because she never realized the chance she had, and we only grew apart from that point. After high school, I went far away and started working as a makeup artist. I eloped at 26 with Eli 27M and never looked back. Last month, our father passed away, and my siblings. And I went to the family home for the funeral. We stayed for 3 weeks and reconnected a lot. Mark had a breakdown at 23 from all the pressure and barely recovered. He is now happier, got a job as a tech in a lab, is married, and has 2 little kids. Josh stopped violin and is a drummer and piano teacher, and Tony is a public defender. Eva chose to be a social worker. It was a bit weird with Eva since we hadn't seen each other for years and gave up contact too. She once again tried to dismiss what we went through, saying that she was as abused as us, even though that is nowhere near true. One evening she completely flipped out on us, calling us and saying that we were like our father and excluded her. She kept going about how our parents never took an interest in her, neither did we, and that she went through hell thinking she was worthless. Mark started to cry, so I took Eva out and lashed out at her, saying she was the for being jealous of our misery and that she will never fit in with us because she never got abused, and it was insane of her to claim she had. She left that night and didn't apologize to any of us. When I went home, I cried a lot and told everything to my husband, expecting him to support me, but he said I should be the one to call and apologize to my sister. So AITA for telling my wife that her sil could not use our brand new SUV as her cousin's party ride. Wife 39, me 40, Bill 32. Bill wife 32. Last week my wife told me that our brand new SUV was requested to be used as a ride, and I thought it was for one of our kids' school. Turns out it was her sil Bill wife. Her sil cousin is having a quinceañera and they want to use our SUV as the ride for her. I know her parents but not the uncle and aunt, like friends or something like that. Just seen them a few times at some reunions. Of course my response was not the best, but I kind of laughed and said no way because it was unbelievable for me. A little backstory: I grew up poor and I did not have much growing up, but I have worked so hard to earn and have what we own. And don't get me wrong, my wife is the sweetest woman I have ever met. She's kind and caring and always looking to help others when possible. She did not offer the SUV, so now my wife is upset with me because I said no, and the way I said it, I did not brought up the topic anymore, and Bill wife went to my in-laws and asked for their SUV instead. Bill wife argument was that renting a nice SUV was too expensive and they were ugly. Now I feel like our family doesn't like me or sees me as not nice. You could have helped but didn't. Oh well. AITA here? Update: my response was no way, and I laughed because I could not believe it, that someone was asking me for our car. Update 2: of course I did apologize to my wife. I love her to death and she means the world to me. AITA for telling my wife to quit her job because she could do it with our sons instead. For context, me, I'm 29 and my wife F28 have been married for the past 4 years and have been blessed with 2 sons. Recently my wife has been complaining about the difficulty of her job more and the amount of work she has to put in following a workday. I work about 50-60 hours a week whereas she works 40 hours a week, and I have tried to increase the amount of homework I do over the weekends lately. The problem for me lies in the fact that we take both kids to daycare, which costs a pretty big chunk of our budget and is more or less 70-80 of her income per month. I make enough for all of us to be more or less in the same financial situation with a few more overtime hours a week if she quit her job. And since she has been complaining recently, when she started venting yesterday, I told her she might as well quit and just take care of the boys, and it'd bump up a few hours since it's pretty much the same type of work she works in social care. According to her, I'm minimizing her work and just not focusing on the real problem. I've tried to talk with her about why she doesn't want to just quit if she keeps whining about the job in the first place, but haven't had much success today. AITA added: it's my fault for not including this, but a lot of people are assuming this is day-to-day venting. It isn't. She wants to pursue a career in her degree digital marketing and sees no future in social care, which is why I asked her why not just quit. AITA for throwing away the lingerie that my friend's brother bought me. I 19F have been living with my best friend 20F for the last 6 months or so. We've been friends since forever. I know her older brother 26M pretty well too because I'd see him when I was younger and at my friend's house and when he'd babysit us sometimes and drive us places. I've known him like my whole life. It was my birthday a month ago and he bought me lingerie, which I thought was like really weird, so I just put it in my drawer. I threw it away a few days ago because I'm never gonna wear it and like it just makes me uncomfortable because he bought it. He was here earlier and me and my friend were talking to him. He asked me if I wore the lingerie yet, and before I could answer, my friend asked if the lingerie was the one I threw in the trash. I was gonna lie, but she already told him what color it was, so he knew that it was lingerie he bought me. He started yelling at me for throwing it away because it cost him a lot of money. I apologized but said that it made me really uncomfortable that he bought it for me. He told me he was just being friendly and thought I'd appreciate the gift. He accused me of thinking he's some kind of pervert and kept yelling at me until I cried and went to my room. I just hated the way he looked at me when he gave me the lingerie, like it grossed me out so much. I don't think he's a bad person or anything, but It just made me uncomfortable and I didn't want to be reminded of the way he looked at me every time I saw the lingerie. That's why I got rid of it. I didn't tell him all this though because it would have really upset him. My friend said I kinda overreacted in throwing it away because he was only trying to be nice. I don't know, AITA? WIBTA for no longer giving my ex her allowance. I 30M have been living with my GF 31F for a little over a year. We share just about everything, and have been through a lot of rough times including living in her car together. When I got a new job, she indicated that she wanted to go back to college to finish her medical degree. I was fully supportive of this, and we worked out the details of our budget together. We considered the money I was bringing in as our money, not mine. This was mutually agreed upon by both of us when we made the budget, that I would be responsible for paying for things, bills, food, etc., until she graduated. Included in our budget was a small amount each of spending money. Essentially, an allowance for each of us. We could spend our allowance on whatever we wanted, and often would spend our allowances on each other, gifts, paying for date night, etc. Now I will preface this by saying it is entirely my fault this has happened. I have lived most of my life with undiagnosed bipolar and ADHD. I recently got them diagnosed, but I'm still learning the ins and outs of how to behave like a normal person. I am quick to anger when I'm doing something and get interrupted. I often assume when someone is upset about something, that they are upset at, or blame me for it, which causes me to get hyper-defensive. I don't do well at expressing my emotions, or how much I care about things. People. I know all of these are issues of mine, and not the responsibility of anyone else to fix. While my GF has been supportive and tried her best to help me with these issues, as well as making me take more interest in caring for myself properly, she recently has hit her limit. It wasn't any one thing. I've never laid hands on her, never threatened her, barely raised my voice. However, my attitude reflects my emotions even in the times I am aware of what I'm doing and actively trying to calm myself down. She broke up with me, saying that we need to fix our friendship before we can consider being in a relationship. I do not disagree. Over the last few months, things have been steadily sliding downhill and I can see the logic of her decision. I do not blame her, I do not hate her, and I am not upset with her over this decision, and I do want us to remain friends through this. She, in my eyes, has done nothing wrong here. Now, there were certain things I agreed to which I would not feel comfortable taking back. For example, I am not comfortable dumping her car payment, cell phone bill, food for her dogs, etc. on her over this. These, as far as I am concerned, are basic necessities of life, and she is going to school full-time. Since all of her necessities are taken care of, I do not feel like it is fair to me to have to continue giving her additional money. WIBTA if I stopped giving her that money, but continued keeping up the rest of my promise to her? WIBTA if I called out my cousin to the whole family about the name she's chosen for her baby? Sorry for any mistakes. This is my first Reddit post. I 32F come from a fairly large family. With my dad's side being Italian, we've always been extremely close. I have two older siblings, a brother and sister, and a younger half-brother. Growing up, we were thick as thieves with our cousins. They were as good as sisters to me and my siblings. Me and my older siblings lost our mom when I was 10 months old. My dad was driven into alcoholism, which led to us being put into foster care for a while. With how hard our mom's loss hit my family, no one from the extended family ever talked about her. No one brought her up or really mentioned her to us out of fear of sending my dad back into alcoholism. On top of all of that, we also lost our dad back in 2016. A while back, both my sister Stacy and cousin Beth, fake names, announced they were pregnant, with Stacy having a boy and Beth having a girl. About 2 months ago, Stacy reached out to Beth and asked her about baby names they're thinking of. Beth and her husband had gone back and forth on names, but the first one they agreed on was our dead mother's name. Stacy nicely told Beth that me, her, and our brother have all talked about using our mom's name for one of our own kids. And if she were to use it, it would hurt all of us a great deal, so you'd think that would be the end of it. But no. I imagine growing up with parents that made a lot of money and rarely told you no can sometimes make one lack empathy. After Stacy and Beth talked, Beth ghosted Stacy for 6 weeks, after which, she sent me and my older siblings a group text where she stated that they're moving forward with using our dead mother's name. Not because they want to honor our mom, and not because it holds some family significance on her husband's side. It's literally just the first name the two of them agreed on. Stacy has always been the one to speak for our sibling pack, but she's pregnant and need to stay calm. I already dedicated myself to my Disney villain era, so I went up to bat for me and my siblings and bluntly responded to Beth. If I can, I'll post the messages in the comments cause character limit. I love my family, but if my dad were still alive, he'd be raising more than just hell upon my cousin. I really want to bring this up with the entire family. I want to make it perfectly clear where me and my siblings stand, and what my boundaries are. I don't want to be at any gathering with Beth or her child. I don't want anyone to mention her child's name around me. They didn't mention my mom around us for 23 years. They can do it again. I feel bad because my Uncle Beth's dad has always been there for us. He got us back to our dad when we were in foster care, and he helped with all the legal shit when our dad died. I just don't know if I'd be an asshole if I brought this up before Beth announces the name to the whole family. Wibta if I called out my cousin to the whole family about the name she's chosen for her baby?